desert is one of the most unique landscapes in the world, and perhaps the one that many of us try to avoid. Unless, of course, you love the heat, or are like me and live in Arizona. But deserts are great places for adventure if you're in the right company, and if you like to try things like sandboarding, camel riding, and other activities that are not possible in other parts of the world. And the desert is also a place full of secrets. While it sometimes looks like the kind of place where nothing interesting is happening, there have been a few times in which people found some pretty interesting stuff in what literally looks like the middle of nowhere. Today we're going to be looking at 10 amazing discoveries in the desert. Much like the ocean, the sand in the desert is a reminder that our world is full of secrets that are just waiting to be discovered. Stay tuned for number 1. It's kind of a doozy. Number 10. A lake. First on this list, we have a lake that quite literally came out of nowhere. It showed up in Tunisia, out of a city called Gafsa, and no one can explain where this lake came from. I'm being pretty serious on that one, it just kind of showed up out of nowhere, but there might be a scientific explanation behind it. It's believed that some small earthquakes opened a gap that sent a lot of water from underground layers all the way up to the surface. Since there's a lot of phosphate in the area, it's believed that the water could produce cancer. For that reason, swimming in this beautiful lake is not recommended, but it's also not banned. When the lake first showed up, its waters were turquoise blue, and now they're turning a murky green, which indicates that there's no fresh flow of water anywhere. I suppose it's not the best place to swim, but it's definitely something that we should admire. Number 9. A ghost town. It seems like it's a must to include ghost towns in this type of list. There's really no way to get away from them, because there's always some abandoned, creepy town in the most remote and secluded areas of the world. The one I want to show you today is Namibia, and it used to be a German settlement. The town was built in the early 1900s when some German rail workers found diamonds in the area. And of course, as soon as they saw that, they spread the word, and in little time, thousands of Germans rushed to the spot to set up a little town. But they finally ran out of spots to mine towards the end of World War II and decided to go look for diamonds somewhere else. Today this place looks like a ghost town, but it is a great tourist attraction for anyone who's into abandoned places. Number 8. The video game graveyard. Have you ever played a video game that was just so bad that you wish you hadn't purchased it? Okay, now imagine how the game developers must feel about it if many people around the world feel the same way you do regarding this game. That was the case of the E.T. video game made for Atari. While E.T. was a famous movie in the 80s, its video game version was so bad that it immediately gained the reputation as one of the worst games in history. Atari had made about 3 million copies of this game that came in the form of cartridges, because that's what they used back then. Why am I telling you this? We got Switch cartridges. However, since the game was so bad, Atari wasn't able to sell these copies. It was such a cataclysmic failure that they ended up burying the cartridges in the desert. No one was exactly sure about this, but then in 2014, a group of documentary filmmakers found the stash of video games. A lot of the copies were damaged, but some of them were still in pretty good condition. Contrary to its 1980s shameful days, the remaining copies of E.T. are now a valuable treasure for anyone who likes to collect video games. Number 7. Someone's tomb. I am not here to discuss religion, but this amazing discovery is of great relevance to anyone who is religious or pretty much to anyone who has an interest in historical facts. It is the tomb of James, the brother of Jesus. Or at least that's what they wanted us to believe back in 2002 when this item was found in the desert. When they found it, it had an inscription in Aramaic, and it said James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. People had all sorts of issues with this discovery, but the main one was that the inscription was likely forged. However, one thing was for sure, this tomb box was carbon dated to the time in which Jesus was on Earth, but it was determined that the inscription had been made at a much later date. This discovery became such an issue that the person who owned the box had to go to trial to determine whether he had been responsible for the fake inscriptions or not. They did find him not guilty, but that didn't mean these inscriptions are legit. Number 6. Meteorites. The desert of Namibia is full of secrets, and the most interesting fact about it is that the people in this country are sometimes not aware of all the amazing things they have in front of their eyes. For them, these items are just part of their everyday life. They just kinda get used to it. At some point, they found large objects that they used to make tools and weapons. But when an explorer came to see the items in 1836, he took some samples and sent them to London, just to find out that they were elements from space. These were fragments of a meteorite, and they were mainly made out of nickel and iron. Gibeon was the name that they gave to the meteorite, in honor to the nearest town in which these fragments were found. Apparently, these out-of-space items hit the Earth in prehistoric times, but it took a while for people to notice that they were not originally from our planet. Number 5. Gold bars. There's no better place to hide a treasure than under the sands of the desert. And don't you just wish you were close to one to try your luck and see if you can unbury a fortune? Well, if you live in the US, you might be closer to that opportunity. Apparently, a man named Scott Taylor found about 280 gold bars in the Utah desert back in the year 2005. It all started when he found a hole covered with boards, and when he decided to jump in, he found the ultimate fortune. Along with the gold bars, he found some pistols and rifles from the Civil War times. Now, the problem is that Scott Taylor doesn't want to tell anyone about the whereabouts of this treasure. He says the only person who will know about it is his son. You can imagine how media has been trying to get this man to talk about his findings, but he's not eager to share a word about it. People aren't even sure this treasure is real anymore. But I guess it's understandable. Who in their right mind would reveal such important information just like that? Certainly not me. Number 4. Noptoplaya. I'm very impressed by the accomplishments made by ancient cultures. I mean, I'm sure they'd be proud of us to see how far we've made it in terms of technology. Maybe not in terms of social status, but what I admire from them is the fact that they were able to do so many things without the help of computers and other devices that are so essential for us today. And here's an example of something that blows my mind, the Noptoplaya. This is a device that was used by early Egyptians to track down the movement of stars and other astronomical phenomena. It was likely used as a calendar, and it dates back to the 5th millennium before Common Era. Number 3. Mummy dogs. This is perhaps the creepiest finding of them all. A few years ago, a group of researchers found the mummified bodies of millions of dogs in some catacombs in Egypt. That's right, I said millions. About 8 million to be more precise. This is the kind of place that would get any animal rights group furious and ready to take some action. Granted, what are they gonna do? The people who did this are long gone. However, these mummy dogs date back to ancient Egypt, to times in which people would worship Anubis, the god of death himself. The dogs were found near Anubis' temple, which is a sacred place in which people would offer these dogs as a way to worship their god. Experts in ancient history say that people used to mummify their pets to have a good time in the afterlife, or as offerings in exchange for help in their everyday problems. Now it's time for the day's best pick. The picture I chose for the day shows a shipwreck lost in the sands of a desert. It looks a bit out of place, but there are actually a lot of legends that claim that historical ships got stranded and eventually lost in the southwestern part of the US. Mostly in California's Colorado desert, but there's not enough proof to determine whether these legends are true. However, there is a real shipwreck in the Namibian desert, and it has become the center of attention for many tourists that visit the area. Number 2. The shipwreck in the desert. It really looks like Namibia is the place to be if you want to find random stuff in the sands of the desert. There's an area called Skeleton Coast, which is easily one of the eeriest places in the world. It was in this spot that a ship was wrecked in September of 1909 after a thick fog kept sailors from seeing the line that divides ocean and sand. The name of the ship was Edward Bullen, and today you can find it at just 400 meters from the shoreline. When you look at it, it certainly feels as if the ship was dropped there from the sky. Honestly, it's far enough from the ocean or any signs of civilization. When you look at the history of this place, it really makes sense that such a shipwreck exists. There have been tons of shipwrecks in this spot, which make it look like some sort of graveyard. Before we move on, do me a favor. My analytics show that only about 15% of you watching are actually subscribed. Come on guys, what's up with that? Can you guys please hit the subscribe button? You guys watch my videos every day anyway, so you might as well subscribe and keep up to date with every video we put out. Number 1. Tutankhamun's Mask. One of the greatest findings of all time was Tutankhamun's mask. This item was made between the years 1354 to 1340 AC, and it's hands down the most famous piece of Egyptian art. It was part of the collection of funerary objects used in the burial of Tutankhamun, one of the most famous pharaohs in ancient Egypt. Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered in 1922 at the Theban necropolis in the Valley of Kings, but it wasn't open until 1923. Finally, in 1925, they were able to access the mask at approximately 3,250 years after it was made. I can't even imagine finding a treasure that old. That December, the mask was taken from the tomb to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where you can find today in public display. Would you like to go see it someday? Let us know in the comment section down below. The desert is certainly full of secrets, and I really hope I can find some cool stuff next time I go out on an adventure. Who knows, maybe I'll find something with historical value. Or just more scorpions. And maybe what about you? Do you like the desert? Would you ever consider taking part in an expedition that involves looking for valuable stuff in the sand? Let us know in the comments section down below. With all that said and done, that's our video for today, folks, and I will see you all next time. Later, everybody.